A wealthy woman discovers her mysterious gardener is teaching her underperforming son advanced math, and he's understanding it. But when the man's past is revealed, her entire family faces a choice: protect their reputation or protect a truth that could destroy everything. Follow this story to the end, like and comment on the city you're viewing so I can see how far my story has progressed. The house was too quiet. Victoria Hale noticed it the moment she stepped through the front door at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, her heels clicking against the marble floor like accusations. The meeting had ended early, a rarity, and she'd driven home through rain that hammered the windshield hard enough to make her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The estate sprawled before her, 15,000 square feet of carefully designed emptiness, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in too much light and not enough warmth. She set her briefcase down, listened. Silence had become the architecture of this place. After James died, it had moved in like a tenant who never paid rent but wouldn't leave. It filled the spaces between rooms, settled into corners, made itself comfortable in Noah's bedroom where her 9-year-old son spent hours doing nothing she could name. Existing, maybe. Barely. But today, the silence had a crack in it. Victoria heard it before she understood what it was. A sound so foreign, it took her brain 3 full seconds to identify it. Laughter. Her son's laughter. The phone in her hand nearly slipped. She hadn't heard that sound in 3 years. Not since the funeral. Not since Noah had stood at the graveside in a suit too big for him and hadn't cried, hadn't spoken, had just stared at the casket like he was memorizing something he'd need later. The laughter came again, high and genuine, cutting through the house like light through a crack. Victoria moved without thinking, following the sound through the hallway, past the living room where a cleaning service kept everything pristine and untouched, past the kitchen where a chef prepared meals Noah barely ate. Her heart was doing something strange in her chest, something that felt like hope and fear mixed together until she couldn't tell them apart. The sound led her to James's study. The door was open. She'd kept it locked for 3 years. Victoria stopped in the doorway and forgot how to breathe. Inside, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, his dark hair falling into his eyes the way it always did, the way she'd stopped trying to fix. He was staring up at the old whiteboard James had used, the one she'd been meaning to have removed. And standing at that board, marker in hand, was Ethan Cole, the gardener. The man she'd hired 8 months ago through an agency, barely glancing at his resume, just needing someone to keep the grounds from turning into a wilderness. He came 3 times a week, never said more than 5 words to her, kept his head down and his son, Leo, a boy around Noah's age, close. She'd seen them working together in the garden, the kind of quiet team that didn't need conversation. But right now, Ethan wasn't gardening. He was teaching. So you see, Ethan was saying, his voice low and steady, the pattern doesn't change just because the numbers get bigger. It's the same relationship, just stretched out. Like this. He drew a series of connected dots on the whiteboard, then handed Noah a marker. You try. Noah took it. His hand was steady, and he drew the next sequence without hesitation, without the defeated slump she'd seen in his shoulders for months. Exactly, Ethan said, and there was something in his voice that made Victoria's throat close up. Pride. The kind she hadn't been able to give her son because she didn't know how to reach him anymore. You're seeing the structure. That's the whole game. It's like a code, Noah said, his voice bright with discovery. Once you know what you're looking for, it's everywhere. Now you're getting it. Victoria's hand found the doorframe. She gripped it hard enough to hurt. Ethan turned and saw her. For a moment, nobody moved. Noah's smile faltered. Ethan straightened, his expression going carefully neutral, the marker still in his hand. He was younger than she'd thought, mid-30s maybe, with the kind of face that looked like it had learned not to give anything away. Dark hair, work clothes, hands that had calluses but held the marker like he'd done this before. Mrs. Hale, he said quietly, I apologize. I should have asked permission. She couldn't find her voice. Her eyes went to Noah, who was watching her with something she hadn't seen in years, fear that she'd take this away, whatever this was. What? She stopped, started again. What's happening here? Noah looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at the whiteboard, then back at her. Your son asked me about a math problem, he said. I was showing him a different way to think about it. That wasn't an answer. Victoria knew evasion when she heard it. She'd built a tech company worth $3 billion by learning to read the space between words. But Noah was standing up now, moving toward her with the marker still in his hand, and she saw something in his face that made her forget what she'd been about to say. He looked alive. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked a little on the word. "I understand it. I actually understand it." She stared at her son, at the whiteboard covered in diagrams she didn't recognize, at the gardener who was watching her with the kind of stillness that meant he was ready to leave, ready to apologize, ready to disappear. "How long has this been happening?" she asked. Ethan glanced at Noah. Some silent communication passed between them. 3 months, he said. 3 months. Victoria felt the words like a punch. 3 months of her son learning from a stranger, 3 months of something happening under her roof that she knew nothing about. 3 months of Noah getting better while she'd been too buried in work to notice. The anger came then, hot and sharp. "You've been teaching my son without my knowledge for 3 months?" "I should have told you," Ethan said. His voice stayed level. "That's on me." "Yes, it is." She looked at Noah. "Go to your room." "Mom." "Now, Noah." The light in her son's face went out like someone had thrown a switch. He set the marker down carefully, grabbed his backpack, and walked past her without meeting her eyes. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the distant sound of his door closing. When she turned back, Ethan was erasing the whiteboard. "Stop," she said. He stopped. Victoria moved into the room, her mind cycling through possibilities too fast to catch. This man had been in her house, around her son, teaching him things she didn't understand, and Noah had been happy about it. "Who are you?" she asked. Ethan set the eraser down. "I'm the person you hired to maintain your property." "That's not what I asked." He studied her for a long moment. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the kind that came from years, not days. And something else. Something careful. Guarded. "I'm someone who saw a kid struggling," he said finally, "and tried to help. By teaching him advanced mathematics in my dead husband's study?" The words came out harsher than she'd meant them. Ethan's expression didn't change. "The study was open. He came in here on his own. I found him one afternoon trying to work through his homework, crying because he couldn't get it." Ethan paused. He thought he was stupid. Victoria's chest tightened. "And you just decided to fix that." "I decided to show him he wasn't stupid. There's a difference." "Without asking me." "Would you have said yes?" The question sat between them like a challenge. Victoria wanted to say, of course, wanted to defend herself. But she knew the answer. She would have said no. She would have hired another tutor like the 3 before, would have signed Noah up for another program that didn't work, would have kept him at arm's length because getting close meant risking the kind of pain she'd spent 3 years learning to avoid. "I need you to leave," she said. Ethan nodded. "I understand." He picked up his jacket from the chair, moved toward the door. He was almost past her when she spoke again. "Is he really understanding it? Or are you just making him think he is?" Ethan stopped, turned to look at her, and for the first time something shifted in his expression. "Give him a problem," he said. "Any problem. Watch what he does with it." Then he walked out. Victoria stood in the study for a long time after he left, staring at the whiteboard, at the patterns drawn there, at the empty spaces where Noah had sat, laughing. She pulled out her phone and called her assistant. "Find out everything you can about Ethan Cole. 6 months earlier. The truck died just outside the estate's front gate. Ethan Cole sat behind the wheel, watching steam rise from under the hood, and felt the universe making a point. The engine ticked in the silence. Beside him, Leo shifted in the passenger seat, his small hands gripping the backpack in his lap like a shield. "Is it broken?" Leo asked. "Yeah." Ethan killed the ignition. "Yeah, it's broken." They'd been driving for 8 hours, running on coffee and determination, fleeing a life that had fallen apart so completely there was nothing left to salvage. The truck had made it 4 states before giving up. Now they were here, wherever here was. Some wealthy enclave north of the city where the houses hid behind gates and the lawns looked like they required engineering degrees to maintain. Ethan reached over and ruffled Leo's hair. "We'll figure it out." Leo looked up at him with James's eyes. That's what Ethan saw every time, the ghost of his brother in his nephew's face. James had been gone 2 years now, dead from a heart attack that no one saw coming, leaving Ethan as Leo's only family. And Ethan had tried. He'd tried so hard to keep things together, until it all came crashing down. He got out of the truck, popped the hood, and stared at the engine like he had any idea what he was looking at. He didn't. Cognitive science was his field. Mathematics. Pattern recognition. Not dying trucks on the side of roads that led to estates he'd never be able to afford. A security guard appeared from the gatehouse, walking toward them with the kind of purposeful stride that said, "You don't belong here." "Sir, you can't park here." Ethan wiped his hands on his jeans. "Wasn't planning to. Engine quit." The guard looked at the truck, then at Leo, then at Ethan, calculating, deciding what kind of problem they were. "I can call a tow," the guard said. "Appreciate it." Ethan pulled out his wallet, then remembered it was empty. "Actually, I'll handle it. Just need a minute." "Take your time." The guard walked back toward the gatehouse, and Ethan closed his eyes. He had $600 left. The truck repairs would cost more. They were sleeping in motels, eating fast food, running toward what? He didn't even know. Just away. Away from Chicago, away from the lawsuit, away from the wreckage of a career that had been stolen from him while everyone watched. "Dad?" Ethan opened his eyes. Leo was standing beside the truck, looking up at him with worry too old for a 9-year-old. "We're okay," Ethan said. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." It was a lie. They both knew it. A car pulled up to the gate, some sleek European thing that cost more than Ethan had made in 5 years. The driver rolled down the window, spoke to the guard, and the gate swung open. The car purred past them, barely slowing. Ethan watched it disappear up the long driveway. "Nice place," Leo said. "Yeah. Do you think they need a gardener?" Ethan looked at his nephew, at the hope in his face. The kid was too smart, too aware of how bad things were. He deserved better than this. Better than a broken-down truck and a father figure who'd lost everything. "Maybe," Ethan said. The idea was ridiculous. He knew nothing about landscaping, but he knew how to learn, and he was good at being invisible, at keeping his head down, at becoming someone else. He walked back to the guard. "The estate," Ethan said. "They hiring?" The guard raised an eyebrow. "You done this kind of work before?" "Yeah," Ethan lied. "Lots of times." 3 days later, he had the job. Now, Victoria's assistant called back within 2 hours. Ethan Cole, age 36, previous employment, spotty. Worked at a landscaping company in Wisconsin for 6 months, a maintenance position in Minnesota before that. Before that, nothing, like he didn't exist. Victoria sat in her office, staring at her computer screen. Nothing? No employment history I can find before 2 years ago. No social media presence. No digital footprint. It's like he's a ghost. People don't just appear out of nowhere. This one did. Victoria ended the call and pulled up the background check she'd signed off on when Ethan was hired. It was basic, clean criminal record, reference from the landscaping company, proof of identity. She'd barely looked at it. The agency had vetted him. That had been enough. Now it felt like negligence. She stood, grabbed her keys, and drove to the agency. The office was small, tucked between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation service, run by a woman named Margaret who'd been placing domestic workers for 30 years. "I need to know about Ethan Cole," Victoria said. Margaret pulled his file. "Quiet, reliable, good with plants. What's the problem?" "How well did you vet him?" "Standard process, background check, references. I want to see the references." Margaret handed over the file. Victoria scanned it. One reference from the Wisconsin company, a brief note saying Ethan was dependable and skilled. She called the number, disconnected. She tried the landscaping company's main line. It rang 6 times before someone picked up. "Yeah? I'm calling about a former employee, Ethan Cole." A pause. "Who?" "Ethan Cole. He listed you as a reference." "Don't know anyone by that name. We've had a lot of people come through, but..." Victoria hung up. She sat in her car in the parking lot and felt the first real threat of fear. Who was this man? And what did he want with her son? Noah didn't come down for dinner. Victoria stood outside his door at 7 p.m. holding a plate of food he wouldn't eat, trying to figure out what to say. She hadn't known what to say to him in 3 years. Every conversation felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. She knocked. Silence. Noah, I brought you dinner. Not hungry. She closed her eyes. Can we talk? About what? How you're going to ruin everything again? The words hit like stones. Victoria opened the door. Noah was sitting on his bed, arms crossed, glaring at the wall. 9 years old and already a master of resentment. I didn't ruin anything, she said. You made him leave. He shouldn't have been teaching you without my permission. Why? Because you don't want me to actually learn something? Victoria set the plate down. That's not fair. You don't even care that I was getting better. You just care that someone did something without asking you first. Noah finally looked at her, and his eyes were red. You don't care about me at all. You just care about control. That's not true. Yes, it is. Ever since Dad died, you've been gone. You're here, but you're not here. And the first time something good happens, you destroy it. Victoria felt the accusation like a knife. Because he was right. She had been gone. She'd buried herself in work because it was easier than being in this house. Easier than looking at her son and seeing James in his face. Easier than admitting she had no idea how to be a mother to a child who was drowning. I'm trying, she said quietly. No, you're not. You're just existing, like me. The parallel was too sharp. Noah turned back to the wall and Victoria stood there, useless, holding words she didn't know how to say. She left the plate and walked out. Ethan didn't come back the next day, or the day after. Victoria told herself it was fine, she'd hire someone else, someone with verifiable credentials, someone who wasn't a mystery. But Noah stopped speaking to her entirely. He moved through the house like a shadow, going to school, coming home, disappearing into his room. The light she'd seen in him that one afternoon was gone, replaced by something worse than the quiet grief she'd gotten used to. Now there was anger, resentment. By the end of the week, his teacher called. Noah's struggling again, Ms. Chen said. He was doing so well for a while. His test scores improved. His participation in class was better. But this week, it's like he's given up. He won't engage. He's withdrawing. Victoria closed her office door. I'll talk to him. With respect, Mrs. Hale, I'm not sure talking is what he needs. He needs consistency, support. Whatever changed a few months ago, it was working. Can you figure out what that was? Victoria knew what it was. She sat at her desk after the call ended and stared at the file on Ethan Cole, the man with no past, the ghost who'd brought her son back to life and then vanished. She picked up her phone and called him. It rang 4 times, then his voice. This is Ethan. It's Victoria Hale. A long pause. Mrs. Hale. I need to talk to you. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't care what you think is a good idea. My son is falling apart. His teacher says he was improving, and now he's worse than before. You did something. I need to understand what. Silence on the line. She could hear traffic in the background, maybe wind. Please, she said, and the word cost her. Just tell me what you did. Another pause, then. I taught him how to see patterns, how to understand structure instead of memorizing steps. That's it. That can't be it. He was laughing. I hadn't heard him laugh in 3 years. Maybe he just needed someone to believe he wasn't broken. The simplicity of it made her chest ache. Can you come back? She asked. Why would you want that? You don't know anything about me. I know my son was better when you were here. That's enough. It shouldn't be. Maybe not. But it is. She paused. I'm not asking you to work for me. I'm asking you to help Noah. Whatever you're running from, whatever you're hiding, I don't care. Just help him. The silence stretched long enough that she thought he'd hung up. Then, I'll think about it. The line went dead. Ethan sat in the parking lot of the motel where he and Leo were staying, staring at his phone. He shouldn't go back. Going back was dangerous. The moment Victoria Hale started digging, and she would dig, she was too smart not to, she'd find the truth. The lawsuit, the scandal, the fact that he wasn't a gardener at all but a disgraced cognitive scientist whose groundbreaking research had been stolen by a man with more power and better lawyers. She'd find out that Ethan Cole wasn't even his real name. But Noah's face kept coming back to him. That moment when the kid had understood the pattern, when the fog had cleared and something clicked into place, that look of pure joy. Ethan had seen it before, in dozens of students, back when he had a lab and a team and funding, back when he was Dr. Ethan Mercer, developing teaching methods that actually worked, proving that most learning disabilities weren't disabilities at all. They were mismatches between how brains processed information and how schools demanded it be processed. He'd been going to change everything. Until Richard Voss stole his research, published it under his own name, and destroyed Ethan's career when Ethan tried to fight back. The lawsuit had been brutal. Voss had money, connections, an army of lawyers. Ethan had the truth and nothing else. He lost. Lost his position, lost his reputation, lost everything except Leo, who'd been just a kid caught in the wreckage of his uncle's collapse. So Ethan had run, changed his name, became invisible, and now Victoria Hill was asking him to step back into the light. Leo came out of the motel room carrying 2 sodas from the vending machine. He handed one to Ethan and climbed into the passenger seat. "We leaving?" Leo asked. Ethan looked at his nephew, at the resilience in his face. The kid had been through hell and kept going. "I don't know," Ethan said. "That lady called you, didn't she? The mom?" "Yeah." "She wants you to come back." "Yeah." Leo cracked open his soda. "Are you going to?" "It's complicated." "Because of the bad stuff that happened before?" Ethan glanced at him. They'd never talked about it directly, but Leo was smart. He knew they were hiding. He knew there was a reason they kept moving. "Yeah," Ethan said. "Because of that." "But that kid, Noah, he was getting better, right?" "Yeah." "Then maybe you should go back, even if it's dangerous." "When did you get so wise?" Leo shrugged. "I'm 9. We're very wise at 9. Ethan laughed despite himself. It felt good, like a muscle he'd forgotten how to use. He looked at the phone again, at Victoria Hale's number. Going back was stupid, reckless, everything he'd spent 2 years trying to avoid, but Noah needed help, and Ethan knew he could give it. He started the truck. "Where are we going?" Leo asked. "Back," Ethan said. "We're going back." Victoria was in a board meeting when Ethan called back. She saw his name on the screen and stepped out of the conference room mid-sentence, ignoring the startled looks from her executives. In the hallway, she pressed the phone to her ear. "I'm listening," she said. "I'll come back," Ethan said, "but we need to establish some ground rules." "Go ahead." "First, you don't interfere with how I teach Noah. You can observe, you can ask questions, but you don't override my methods." Victoria bristled. "He's my son." "I know. But if you want me to help him, you have to trust me. That's non-negotiable." She paced the hallway, weighing control against results. Control had gotten her a multi-billion-dollar company. It had also gotten her a son who wouldn't speak to her. "Fine," she said. "What else?" "Second, this stays between us. No tutoring companies, no educational consultants observing sessions, just me, Noah, and occasionally Leo, if that's all right." "Why Leo?" "Because they work well together, and because my son needs stability as much as yours does." Victoria heard something in his voice then, a mirror of her own desperation. 2 parents trying to protect their kids from damage already done. "Agreed," she said. "Anything else?" A pause. "Yeah. If you start digging into my background and you find something you don't like, you talk to me first before making any decisions. I deserve that much." The request was too careful, too specific. It confirmed what she already suspected. He was hiding something significant. But she thought of Noah's face when he'd been learning, the light in his eyes she hadn't seen since James died. "All right," she said. "When can you start?" "Tomorrow, 3 o'clock." He hung up before she could respond. Victoria stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at her phone. Then she went back into the conference room and ended the meeting early. Her CFO protested. They were in the middle of Q4 projections, but she cut him off. "Reschedule it," she said, and walked out. She had to tell Noah. She found him in his room, headphones on, staring at nothing. When she knocked, he didn't respond. She walked in anyway and sat on the edge of his bed. He pulled off the headphones with obvious reluctance. "What?" "Ethan's coming back." Noah's expression shifted through several emotions too fast to track: disbelief, hope, suspicion. He settled on caution. Why? Because I asked him to. Because you were right. You were getting better, and I took that away. The admission hurt. I'm sorry. Noah studied her like he was looking for the trap. You're actually letting him teach me again? Yes? Without freaking out about it? I'm going to try very hard not to freak out about it. Something cracked in Noah's careful mask. His eyes got bright. When? He asked. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Noah nodded, biting his lip. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He leaned forward and hugged her. It was quick, awkward, over in seconds. But it happened. Victoria's throat closed up. She reached out to hug him back, but he'd already pulled away, putting his headphones on again. The wall was back up. But for a moment, it had come down. That was something. She left his room and went to her office, pulling up everything she could find on Ethan Cole. The man was a ghost. No social media, no digital presence, nothing before 2 years ago. People didn't just appear fully formed. They had histories, families, paper trails, unless they were running from something. Victoria pulled out her phone and called her head of security. I need a full background investigation, she said. Everything you can find on Ethan Cole. I want to know where he came from, what he's done, and why he's hiding. How deep should I go? All the way down. She ended the call and stared at her computer screen. She'd agreed to talk to Ethan first if she found something. She'd keep that promise. But she was going to find out who he really was. The next afternoon, Ethan arrived at exactly 3 o'clock. Victoria watched from the living room window as his truck pulled up the driveway, the same battered vehicle she'd barely noticed before. He got out, then helped Leo out of the passenger side. The boy was thin, dark-haired, carrying a backpack that looked too heavy for him. She opened the door before they reached it. Mrs. Hale, Ethan said. He was wearing the same work clothes as before, jeans, a faded jacket, boots that had seen better days. He looked tired. Victoria, she corrected, if you're going to be spending time in my house, we can skip the formalities. He nodded. Leo hung back, shy. Victoria crouched down to his eye level. You must be Leo. The boy nodded. Noah's upstairs. He's been waiting since noon. Leo's face brightened a little. Can I go see him? Victoria glanced at Ethan, who nodded. She pointed toward the stairs. Second door on the left. Leo took off, his footsteps echoing through the foyer. Ethan watched him go with the expression of someone who spent a lot of time worrying. He's a good kid, Victoria said. Yeah, he is. They stood there for a moment, the silence awkward. Finally, Ethan spoke. Thank you for giving this another chance. Don't thank me yet. I'm still trying to figure out if this is the smartest or stupidest decision I've ever made. Fair enough? She led him toward James's study. Upstairs, she could hear Noah and Leo talking, their voices animated. When had Noah last sounded like that? In the study, Ethan set down a worn messenger bag and pulled out several items: a set of wooden blocks, a deck of cards, some smooth stones, and a few sheets of graph paper. Victoria leaned against the desk. That's your teaching toolkit? The basics. Most of what Noah needs isn't in textbooks. It's in understanding how patterns work, how systems connect. He arranged the blocks on the desk. Traditional math education teaches procedures. I teach concepts. Once you understand the concept, the procedures become obvious. And that works? It works for kids whose brains don't process information linearly, which is more kids than the system wants to admit. He looked at her. Noah's not struggling because he's not smart. He's struggling because everyone's been teaching him in a language his brain doesn't speak. Victoria absorbed that. His teachers never said anything like that, because they don't know. They're working with the curriculum they're given, teaching the way they were taught. It's not their fault, but it doesn't help kids like Noah. Kids like Noah, she repeated. You mean kids with learning disabilities? I mean kids who think differently. That's not a disability. It's just different wiring. Ethan paused. Your husband, James, what did he do? The question caught her off guard. He was an engineer, aerospace. Why? Did he think in pictures? Spatial reasoning, three-dimensional modeling? Yes. How did you know? Because Noah does too. I can see it in how he approaches problems. He's trying to visualize the relationships, but everyone keeps forcing him to memorize formulas. Ethan picked up one of the blocks. His brain wants to build the concept in 3 dimensions, so that's what I let him do. Victoria stared at him. You figured all that out in 3 months? I figured it out in 3 sessions. The rest was just giving him the tools to work with his strengths instead of fighting them. Before she could respond, Noah appeared in the doorway with Leo behind him. Can we start? Noah asked, and there was eagerness in his voice that made Victoria's chest ache. Ethan smiled. Yeah, we can start. Victoria sat in the corner of the study, trying to be invisible. Ethan had pulled 2 chairs up to the desk, and Noah and Leo sat side by side, both leaning forward, with identical expressions of focus. All right, Ethan said, spreading the graph paper out. Last time we were working on quadratic relationships. Who remembers what makes something quadratic? The rate of change changes, Noah said immediately. Right, show me. Noah grabbed a pencil and started sketching. Not numbers, shapes. He drew a series of squares, each one larger than the last, then wrote numbers beside them. See, if you start with a 1 by 1 square, you have 1 unit. Then 2 by 2 is 4 units. 3 by 3 is 9. The difference between 1 and 4 is 3. The difference between 4 and 9 is 5. The differences go up by 2 each time. Ethan nodded. And what's that tell you? That the pattern is exponential. No, wait. Noah frowned. Not exponential. Polynomial. 2nd degree. Exactly. Leo, your turn. Give me another example of a quadratic relationship. Leo thought for a moment. Gravity? Good. Why? Because when something falls, it accelerates. The speed keeps increasing, so the distance it travels increases faster and faster. Right. So if Noah's thinking about it spatially with squares, and you're thinking about it with motion, you're both seeing the same mathematical relationship from different angles. Ethan pulled out the wooden blocks. Now let's build it. For the next hour, Victoria watched her son learn. It wasn't like any teaching she'd seen before. There were no worksheets, no drills, no memorization. Instead, Ethan had them building structures with the blocks, seeing how patterns scaled, discovering relationships through physical manipulation. When they hit concepts that needed equations, he showed them how the equations were just shorthand for what they'd already figured out with their hands. And Noah was glowing. He made mistakes, got frustrated, argued with Leo about the best way to represent something. But he never shut down, never gave up. He was engaged in a way Victoria had never seen, fully present, his mind working at a speed she hadn't known he was capable of. At one point, Ethan posed a problem that stumped both boys. They sat there silent, frowning at the blocks. I don't get it, Noah finally said. Yes, you do, Ethan said. You just haven't found the right angle yet. Step back. Look at the whole structure. Noah stood up, walked around the desk, crouched down to see it from below. Then his face cleared. Oh, it's symmetric. If I rotate it, he grabbed the blocks and rearranged them. The pattern emerged. There, he said, triumphant. Ethan grinned. Told you. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. This was what learning was supposed to look like, not the grinding misery of homework battles and failed tests. This, curiosity and challenge, and the joy of figuring something out. When the session ended, both boys were exhausted but happy. Leo slumped in his chair, and Noah was still scribbling notes on the graph paper, not wanting to stop. Next time, Ethan said, we'll tackle functions. Sound good? Yes, Noah said immediately. Ethan started packing up his materials. Victoria walked over to the desk, looking at what Noah had written, pages of diagrams and notes in handwriting that was messy but purposeful. Can I ask you something? She said to Ethan. Sure. Where did you learn to teach like this? His hand stilled on the messenger bag. Long time ago. Different life. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting right now. She wanted to push, but Noah was watching them, his expression anxious. She let it drop. Same time Thursday? She asked. Ethan nodded. Same time. After they left, Noah went upstairs without being asked. Victoria stood in the study, looking at the whiteboard where Ethan had drawn a complex diagram showing the relationships between different types of mathematical patterns. Her phone rang. Her head of security. "What did you find?" she asked. "Not much. Ethan Cole exists on paper, but barely. Social security number is real. Background check is clean, but there's no employment history before 2 years ago. No college records, no permanent address before Wisconsin. It's like he materialized out of nothing." People don't materialize out of nothing. No, they don't. Which means either his records are sealed or Ethan Cole isn't his real name. Victoria closed her eyes. "Keep digging." "How far do you want me to go? I need to know who he really is." She ended the call and sat down at James's desk. The room still smelled like him, even after 3 years. That combination of coffee and the cologne he'd worn. She'd kept the study locked because being in here hurt. But Noah had come in here on his own, had found comfort in it, or maybe just space. And Ethan had met him here. Victoria pulled out her laptop and started searching. If Ethan Cole wasn't his real name, there had to be a reason. People changed their names when they were running. From debt, from criminal records, from scandals, or from something worse. She pulled up image search, typing in variations. Math teacher, cognitive science, educational researcher. Pages of results. She scrolled through them, not even sure what she was looking for. Then she stopped. The photo was from a university website, archived from 5 years ago. A research team standing in front of a lab. And there, third from the left, was a man who looked like Ethan but wasn't, younger, cleaner, wearing a suit instead of work clothes. The caption read, "Dr. Ethan Mercer and team celebrate breakthrough in cognitive learning research." Dr. Ethan Mercer. Victoria's heart kicked into a higher gear. She clicked through to the archived page. The research lab had been at Northwestern University. Dr. Mercer had been developing new methodologies for teaching mathematics to students with learning differences. The work had been groundbreaking, promising. And then, nothing. The lab's website had been taken down 3 years ago. Dr. Mercer's name disappeared from all university records. Victoria searched his name specifically and found only a handful of references. A few published papers, some conference presentations, and then one news article from 3 years ago. Researcher loses plagiarism lawsuit against prominent educator. She clicked on it. The article was brief. Dr. Ethan Mercer had accused Dr. Richard Voss, a well-known educational researcher and author, of stealing his cognitive learning methodology. Mercer claimed Voss had used proprietary research from their collaboration to publish a best-selling book without credit or compensation. The lawsuit had been dismissed. Mercer's reputation had been destroyed in the process. Multiple experts testified that his research was derivative, that his claims were unfounded, that he was seeking attention. The article included a photo. Ethan, or Mercer, looking exhausted and defeated outside a courthouse. Victoria sat back in her chair. So that's who he was, a disgraced scientist, a man who'd lost everything and was hiding under a fake name. And he'd been teaching her son. She should fire him immediately, cut all contact, protect Noah from whatever mess this man had brought with him. But Noah had been laughing. Victoria picked up her phone, then set it down. She'd promised Ethan she'd talk to him first if she found something. She'd keep that promise. But she was going to get answers. The next day she called him. "We need to talk," she said. "In person." "About what?" "You know what?" A long pause. "When?" "Tonight, after the boys are asleep." He agreed. Victoria spent the day preparing. She printed out everything she'd found, the photos, the articles, the court documents. By the time Ethan arrived at 8 p.m., she had it all laid out on the dining room table, like evidence. He stood in the doorway, looking at the spread, and something in his expression shut down completely. "So you found it," he said. "Sit down." He sat. She sat across from him, the papers between them. "Dr. Ethan Mercer," she said, "cognitive scientist, researcher. You developed a teaching methodology, and someone stole it. Richard Voss stole it, and then destroyed my career when I tried to prove it. The court didn't agree with you. The court didn't care about the truth. Voss had money and connections. I had evidence that his lawyers made disappear." Ethan's voice was flat, carefully controlled. "He took everything, my research, my reputation, my future. And when I fought back, he made sure no one would ever hire me again." Victoria studied him. "So you changed your name and became a gardener." I became whatever I needed to be to survive, to protect Leo. Leo's your son? My nephew. His father, my brother, died 2 years ago. Heart attack. I'm all he has left. Ethan met her eyes. I know what you're thinking. I lied to you. I'm not who I said I was. You should fire me and never let me near your son again. Is that what you want me to do? No, but I'd understand it. Victoria pushed the papers aside. Tell me about the research, the methodology you developed. Ethan hesitated. Then he started talking. He told her about his work at Northwestern, about discovering that most learning difficulties weren't cognitive deficits, but mismatches between teaching methods and how individual brains processed information. He developed a system that used pattern recognition and spatial reasoning to teach abstract concepts, making mathematics accessible to students who'd been labeled as failures. The results had been extraordinary. Students who'd been failing for years suddenly understood. Test scores improved. More importantly, students stopped hating math and started seeing it as something they could master. Voss had been brought in as a consultant. He'd seen the research. And then, 6 months later, he'd published a book using Ethan's methods, claiming them as his own. I had documentation, Ethan said. Research logs, emails, everything. But Voss's lawyers argued it was collaborative work that I'd contributed, but he'd refined it. They painted me as a bitter junior researcher trying to steal credit from an established expert. By the time the case was dismissed, I was radioactive. No university would touch me. No one would fund my research. I was done. So you ran. I ran, changed my name, started over, tried to find some kind of life where Leo wouldn't have to pay for my mistakes. He looked at her. And then I saw Noah. Saw him struggling the same way my students used to struggle, and I couldn't walk away. Victoria absorbed it all. The story made sense. It explained everything. His skills, his methods, his need to hide. Do you regret it? She asked. Fighting back against Voss? Every day. It cost me everything, and it didn't change anything. He still has the career, the recognition, the book deal. I'm living in motels and pretending to be someone else. Ethan's voice cracked slightly. But I couldn't just let him steal it. That research could help millions of kids, and he's using it to make money while actual students are still falling through the cracks. What if you could prove it? I tried. I lost. That was 3 years ago. Things change. People make mistakes. Maybe there's something his lawyers missed. Ethan shook his head. There's nothing. Trust me, I looked. He covered his tracks too well. Victoria leaned forward. I'm very good at finding things people don't want found, and I have resources you didn't have. Why would you do that? Because you saved my son. Because what happened to you was wrong. And because if your methodology works, and I've seen that it does, then it should be yours. Ethan stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. You believe me? I watched you teach Noah. I saw what you can do. That's not something you learned from Richard Voss. That's yours. She paused. But I need you to be honest with me from now on. No more secrets. If we're going to do this, I need to know everything. Do what? Prove you were right. Destroy Voss. Get your life back. That's impossible. I built a $3 billion company from nothing. I don't believe in impossible. Victoria stood up. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep teaching Noah. I'm going to start an investigation into Richard Voss. And when we find something, and we will, you're going to get the credit you deserve. Ethan stood slowly, like he didn't quite believe what he was hearing. Why are you doing this? Because my son hasn't smiled in 3 years, and you made him smile. Because you're good at what you do, and you shouldn't have to hide it. And because... She paused, surprised by her own honesty. Because I know what it's like to lose everything and have no one believe you. Something shifted in Ethan's expression, understanding maybe, or recognition. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly? Fair point. Victoria gathered the papers. Go home, be with Leo. I'll call you when I have something. After he left, Victoria sat alone in the dining room, staring at the photograph of Dr. Ethan Mercer standing with his research team, all of them smiling like they were going to change the world. She picked up her phone and called her lawyer. I need you to look into a plagiarism case, she said. And I need you to find out everything about a man named Richard Voss. Everything he's ever done, everyone he's ever worked with, every book deal and speaking engagement and research grant. What are we looking for? A pattern. People who steal once usually steal again. We just need to find proof. She ended the call and looked at Ethan's photo again. She was going to get him his life back, even if it meant burning Voss's to the ground. Victoria's lawyer called back 3 days later with a name. Dr. Sarah Chen. She worked with Voss 6 years ago on a research project about early childhood literacy. Left academia abruptly, no explanation. Now she runs a bookstore in Portland. Victoria was in her office, staring at spreadsheets she couldn't focus on. Did she leave before or after working with Voss? Right after. 3 months into their collaboration, she resigned from her position at Columbia and disappeared from academic circles completely. Find her. I want to talk to her. Victoria, if she left academia, she probably doesn't want to be found. Then make it worth her while. Everyone has a price. She hung up and pulled out her phone, scrolling through the messages from Ethan. He'd been sending her updates after each session with Noah. Brief, clinical notes about what they'd covered, how Noah had responded, what concepts they'd tackle next. The messages were careful, professional, giving her exactly what she'd asked for without revealing anything personal. But between the lines, she could see the pattern. Noah was progressing faster than any tutor had predicted. His confidence was building. He'd stopped saying he was stupid. Her phone buzzed. A text from Noah's school. Noah earned an A on his math quiz today. First time this year. Wanted to share the good news. Victoria stared at the message. Then she forwarded it to Ethan with 2 words. Thank you. His response came immediately. That was all him. She smiled despite herself. Then she called her head of security. I need everything you can find on Richard Voss. Published works, speaking engagements, research collaborations. Anyone he's worked with. Anyone who might have a grudge. I want a complete map of his professional life. That's going to take time. Then start now. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria became obsessed. She hired a team of researchers, had them pull every paper Voss had ever published, every book he'd written, every grant he'd received. She cross-referenced names, looking for patterns, looking for other people who might have been used the way Ethan had been used. She found 7 researchers who'd collaborated with Voss on projects, then left academia shortly after. 7 careers that had ended abruptly with no clear explanation. Most of them had moved on to other fields, teaching high school, working in corporate training, one selling insurance, and Dr. Sarah Chen running a bookstore in Portland. Victoria's lawyer made contact. Chen refused to talk. Wouldn't return calls, wouldn't respond to emails. So Victoria did what she always did when conventional methods failed. She showed up in person. She flew to Portland on a Friday, told Noah she had a business meeting, and didn't mention to Ethan where she was going. The bookstore was small, tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage clothing store in a neighborhood that smelled like rain and coffee beans. Inside, the shelves were packed floor to ceiling, and a woman in her early 40s stood behind the counter, sorting through a box of new arrivals. Dr. Sarah Chen looked up when Victoria walked in. Her expression shifted immediately. Recognition, then wariness. You're Victoria Hale, Chen said, and you're avoiding my lawyer. I don't talk about my time in academia. I'm sorry you wasted a trip. Victoria picked up a book from the nearest shelf, pretending to examine it. Richard Voss stole research from a man named Ethan Mercer, destroyed his career. I'm trying to prove it. Chen's hand stilled on the box. I can't help you. Can't or won't? Both. Chen set down the book she'd been holding. Look, I don't know what you think you're going to find, but Voss is untouchable. He has lawyers, he has money, he has connections that go all the way to the top of every major university in the country. People who've tried to expose him have been crushed. I'm not interested in being crushed again. So he did steal from you. Chen's jaw tightened. I'm asking you politely to leave my store. Victoria set the book down and pulled out her phone. She showed Chen the photo of Ethan's research team, then a more recent photo, Ethan in work clothes, teaching Noah and Leo at the dining room table. This is what Voss turned him into. A man with a doctorate hiding under a fake name, pretending to be a gardener because his career was destroyed so thoroughly he can't even exist in academia anymore. He has a 9-year-old nephew who deserves better than living in motels and running from the past. Victoria met Chen's eyes. I'm not asking you to testify. I'm not asking you to go public. I'm asking you to tell me the truth so I know what I'm fighting." Chen stared at the photos for a long time. Then she sighed and flipped the sign on the door to closed. "Come to the back," she said. They sat in a cramped office surrounded by stacks of books and inventory sheets. Chen made tea. Neither of them drank. "I was working on literacy intervention strategies," Chen began, "specifically for kids from low-income backgrounds who were falling behind in reading comprehension. I'd been developing this methodology for 3 years. It was brilliant, if I say so myself. Data-driven, scalable, effective. Voss heard about it through a colleague, reached out about collaboration, said he could help me get funding, get published in top journals, maybe even turn it into a book. Let me guess. He wanted access to your research. He said it was just to review it, to help shape the proposal for grants. I trusted him. He was Richard Voss. Everyone in education knew his name, so I gave him everything. Research notes, preliminary data, methodology outlines. 3 months later, he published a paper using my framework. My exact framework. He changed some terminology, restructured the presentation, but it was mine." Victoria leaned forward. "What did you do?" "I confronted him. He laughed, said I'd misunderstood our collaboration, that the ideas had emerged from our discussions together, that I was welcome to publish my own version, but his was already out there." Chen's voice went hard. "Then he called my department chair and suggested I was having mental health issues, suggested I was becoming unstable, making wild accusations. Within a week, I was placed on administrative leave pending a psychological evaluation. He had you declared mentally unfit?" "Not officially, but the implication was enough. My colleagues started treating me like I was fragile. My research funding was quietly redirected. I could have fought it, but I was exhausted, so I quit, walked away, started over here where nobody knows who I am or what I lost." Victoria's hands curled into fists. "Do you have documentation? Proof that the research was yours?" "I have my original notes, time-stamped emails, everything. But Voss's lawyers would argue the same thing they argued with your friend Ethan, that it was collaborative work, that the ideas emerged through our professional relationship, that I'm misremembering or exaggerating my contribution." Chen finally picked up her tea, then set it down without drinking. "The thing about Voss is he's smart. He never outright steals. He collaborates just enough to create plausible deniability. He finds vulnerable researchers, people early in their careers, people without institutional backing, and he takes what they have. Then he buries them if they complain. But How many others do you know about?" "At least 4, maybe more. We don't exactly have reunions to compare notes." Victoria pulled out her list of names. "Are these them?" Chen scanned the paper and nodded. "Those 3 for sure. The others I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me." "Would they talk to me?" "Probably not. We all signed NDAs as part of settlement agreements. Voss pays people to go away quietly." "You took a settlement?" "A small one. Enough to open this store and try to build something new. I know how that sounds, like I sold out. But I was broke and blacklisted and tired of fighting." Chen met her eyes. "What makes you think you can do what none of us could?" "Because I have resources you didn't have, and because I'm not trying to salvage my own career. I'm trying to save someone else's. That makes me dangerous." Chen almost smiled. "Voss doesn't know what he's dealing with, does he?" "Not yet." When Victoria flew back that evening, she had copies of Chen's research notes, her emails with Voss, and contact information for 2 of the other researchers who might be willing to talk off the record. It wasn't enough for a legal case. Not yet. But it was a pattern. She called Ethan from the airport. "I found someone," she said. "Dr. Sarah Chen. Voss did to her what he did to you." Silence on the other end. Then, "Is she willing to testify? Not publicly, but she gave me documentation, and she thinks there are others." "How many others?" "At least 4 confirmed, maybe more we haven't found yet." She heard him exhale. "So it wasn't just me?" "No, it wasn't just you. He has a pattern. We just need to prove it." "Victoria." His voice was different now, rougher. "Thank you for doing this. You don't have to—" "Yes, I do. I'll call you when I land." She hung up before he could say anything else. Through the window, she could see planes taking off into the dark sky, their lights blinking like Morse code. She thought about Ethan, living in motels, teaching her son in secret, carrying the weight of a stolen career. She thought about Sarah Chen running a bookstore instead of changing education policy. She thought about all the people Voss had crushed. Not anymore. Back at the estate, Noah was asleep, but he'd left a note on her desk in his messy handwriting. Got another A. Ethan says I'm ready for algebra. Victoria held the note for a long time. Then she went to her office and started making calls. By morning, she had meetings scheduled with 3 of the researchers on her list. 2 had agreed to talk off the record. 1 had hung up immediately, but hadn't said no. The first interview was a disaster. Dr. Marcus Webb, who'd worked with Voss on a curriculum development project 7 years ago, met her at a coffee shop in Boston and spent 20 minutes explaining why he couldn't talk. I have a family, Webb said. Kids in college, a mortgage. Voss's lawyers made it very clear what would happen if I spoke publicly about our collaboration. I'm not asking you to go public, just tell me what happened. And then what? You use it to build a case? And suddenly I'm getting subpoenaed, and my name is in court documents, and Voss comes after me again? No, thank you. He's still out there stealing from other people. That's not my problem anymore. I made my peace with what happened. You should tell your friend to do the same. Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to push, but she saw the fear in Webb's eyes and knew it was useless. Some battles had been lost too long ago to resurrect. The second interview went better. Dr. Amanda Price had worked with Voss on educational technology integration. She lived in Denver, worked as a consultant now, and agreed to meet Victoria at her office. He took my adaptive learning algorithm, Price said flatly. I'd spent 2 years developing it. He saw a demo, asked to collaborate on scaling it, then published the methodology in a journal article 6 months later without my name on it. What did you do? Same thing everyone does, tried to fight it. Got buried in legal threats. Eventually took a settlement that required me to sign an NDA and never speak about the algorithm again. But you just told me about it. Because I'm tired of being silent, and because NDAs have limits, I can't use the algorithm commercially or publish about it, but I can talk about what happened to me personally. Price leaned back in her chair. What are you planning? I'm going to destroy him. That's ambitious. I don't make small plans. Price studied her. You really think you can do this? People have tried. He always wins. People didn't have what I have, which is unlimited resources, a documented pattern, and the fact that I don't care if I lose money or reputation going after him. I'm not an academic with a career to protect. I'm a CEO with enough wealth to weather any legal battle he throws at me. Price smiled slowly. Then maybe you actually have a shot. She gave Victoria copies of her settlement agreement, her original research notes, and the names of 2 other researchers she thought might have been targeted. By the time Victoria left Denver, she had 5 confirmed cases of Voss's theft. 5 people whose careers had been damaged or destroyed. It still wasn't enough. She needed something that would hold up in court, something that would survive Voss's lawyers. She needed a smoking gun. Back home, Noah was in the study with Ethan and Leo, working through algebra concepts using colored blocks and graph paper. Victoria stood in the doorway, watching. Noah was explaining something to Leo, his hands moving as he talked, completely absorbed in the problem. This was her son, the one who'd been failing math 6 months ago, the one who'd believed he was stupid. Ethan glanced up and saw her. He said something to the boys, then walked over. How was Denver? He asked quietly. Productive. Dr. Price is willing to provide documentation. That's 5 cases now. 5 cases of the same pattern. That has to mean something legally. It means we can show he's done this before. But his lawyers will argue that each case is different, that there's no direct connection between what he did to you and what he did to them. Victoria paused. We need proof that he knew what he was doing, that it was intentional, systematic. You mean like a confession? Something like that. Ethan shook his head. He's not going to confess. No, but he might slip up if we push the right buttons. What are you thinking? Victoria looked back at Noah, who was laughing at something Leo had said. I'm thinking we go public. Not with a lawsuit. We don't have enough yet. But with the story. Let people know that Richard Voss's methods aren't his, that he built his career on stolen research. That'll make him come after us. Exactly. And when he does, he'll make a mistake. They always do when they're angry. Ethan was quiet for a moment. This could destroy what's left of my reputation. Your reputation was already destroyed. Now we're rebuilding it. Victoria, if this backfires, it won't. You can't know that. No, but I can stack the deck in our favor. She met his eyes. Are you with me? He looked at Noah and Leo, both of them bent over their work, completely focused. Then he looked back at Victoria. Yeah, he said. I'm with you. The article went live 2 weeks later. Victoria had contacted a journalist she knew, someone who specialized in investigative education reporting. She'd given him everything, the documentation from Chen and Price, the pattern of researchers who'd left academia after working with Voss, Ethan's story, the court documents from the original lawsuit. The headline read, "The Man Behind the Method, How Educational Guru Richard Voss Built His Empire on Stolen Research." It was thorough, carefully researched, devastating. It detailed 5 separate cases of potential theft, included quotes from 3 of the researchers, and presented Ethan's original work alongside Voss's published methodology, showing the undeniable similarities. The response was immediate. By noon, the article had been shared thousands of times. Education blogs picked it up, Twitter exploded, academic forums debated it, and Richard Voss issued a statement calling it a malicious fabrication by disgruntled former colleagues with an axe to grind. Then his lawyers sent a letter. It arrived at Victoria's office by courier, 12 pages of legal threats demanding a retraction and warning of a defamation lawsuit if the false and damaging claims weren't immediately withdrawn. Victoria read it twice, then called her lawyer. "He's threatening to sue," she said. "Let him. Discovery would force him to turn over documentation about all his collaborations. That's exactly what we want." "So we don't retract?" "Hell no. We double down," Victoria smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." She drafted a response that her legal team polished and released publicly. It stated that every claim in the article was supported by documentation, that she stood behind the reporting, and that she welcomed the opportunity to present evidence in court. Then she waited for Voss to make his move. It came 3 days later. Not a lawsuit. That would have been too predictable. Instead, Voss went after Ethan directly. A second article appeared, this one in a conservative education journal that Voss had ties to. It painted Ethan as a failed academic with a grudge, someone who'd been rightfully dismissed from his position for unprofessional conduct. It included quotes from anonymous sources claiming Ethan had falsified research data, that his teaching methods were unproven and potentially harmful, that he'd left Northwestern under a cloud of ethical violations. None of it was true, but it was convincing. Victoria read the article in her office, her hands shaking with rage. They'd twisted everything, made Ethan look like the villain, made Voss look like the victim of a smear campaign. Her phone rang. "Ethan, did you see it?" he asked. His voice was hollow. "I saw it. It's all lies. Lies that people will believe. Victoria, this is exactly what happened last time. They're going to destroy me all over again." "No, they're not. This is desperation. Voss is lashing out because we hit a nerve. He's hitting back harder, and he has bigger platforms." "Then we'll hit back harder than that." "With what? We don't have proof yet. We have a pattern. We have documentation, but we don't have the smoking gun. And now he's making me look like a fraud." Victoria stood up, pacing her office. "Then we find the proof. We keep digging until we find something he can't explain away. And in the meantime, my name is getting dragged through the mud." Again, she heard the defeat in his voice, the exhaustion. This was what Voss did. He broke people, made them give up. "Don't quit on me now," she said. "We're close. I can feel it." "You can't feel legal evidence, Victoria." "No, but I can feel when someone's scared. And that article? That's fear. Voss is terrified we're going to find something." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Noah asked me today if I was going to have to leave." Victoria's stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I'd stay as long as I could, but he's not stupid. He's seen the articles. Kids at school are talking about it." His voice cracked. "I'm ruining his life just by being here." "You saved his life by being here." "Did I? Or did I just make everything worse?" "Ethan, I need to think. I'll call you later." He hung up. Victoria stared at her phone, then threw it across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. She'd promised him she could fix this. She'd promised they'd win. But right now, it felt like they were losing. She picked up her phone. The screen was cracked but still functional, and called her head of security. I need you to find something, anything. I don't care how deep you have to dig. Financial records, personal emails, witnesses who'll talk. Find me something on Richard Voss that we can use. Victoria, we've been looking for weeks. Then look harder. He's not clean. Nobody who does what he does is clean. There's something. Find it. That night, Noah asked if Ethan was coming back. They were eating dinner, or rather, Victoria was pushing food around her plate while Noah actually ate. He'd been doing that more lately, eating without being reminded, engaging with the world instead of hiding from it. I don't know, Victoria said honestly. Is it because of those articles? The ones saying he's a liar? You saw those? Everyone saw them. Kids at school said he's a fake. Victoria set down her fork. He's not a fake. Then why are people saying he is? Because the man he's fighting is powerful and scared, so he's trying to make Ethan look bad. Noah absorbed this. That's not fair. No, it's not. Are you going to fix it? Victoria looked at her son, this child who'd been broken and was finally healing, who'd found hope in the most unexpected place. Yes, she said, I'm going to fix it. Promise? She shouldn't promise. She didn't know if she could deliver, but she looked at Noah's face and couldn't say no. I promise. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely source. Victoria's security team had been digging into Voss's financial records, looking for anything questionable. What they found was a pattern of payments to a company called Academic Insight Solutions. Small amounts, regular intervals, going back 7 years. Academic Insight Solutions turned out to be a consulting firm run by a former research assistant of Voss's, a woman named Jennifer Walsh. Victoria had her lawyer reach out. Walsh agreed to meet. They met at a restaurant in Manhattan, neutral territory. Walsh was in her 50s, well-dressed, guarded. She ordered wine and waited for Victoria to speak first. You worked with Richard Voss, Victoria said. 10 years ago. I was his research assistant. And now he pays your company regularly. For what? Walsh took a long sip of wine. Consulting services. What kind of consulting? The kind I'd prefer not to discuss. Victoria leaned forward. I'm going to be direct with you. I know Voss has been stealing research from other academics. I have documentation from 5 separate cases. I'm building a pattern to prove he's been doing this systematically. And those payments from him to you, they started right around the time his book deals started getting bigger. That's not a coincidence. Walsh's expression didn't change. I signed an NDA. ND as don't protect illegal activity. If you helped him steal intellectual property, that NDA won't save you. I didn't help him steal anything. Then what did you do? Walsh set down her glass. I'm not admitting to anything, but hypothetically, if someone were running a consulting firm that helped clients identify promising research and development, research that hadn't been published yet, research from academics who didn't have strong institutional backing, that would be legal. Victoria's pulse quickened. And if that someone then passed that information to a client who used it to publish their own work? Still legal. Unethical maybe, but legal. Even if the client knew the research was stolen, the client would argue they didn't know. They'd say they hired a consultant to identify trends in the field, and the consultant provided analysis. What the client did with that information was their own decision. Victoria sat back. You've thought about this. I've had lawyers explain it to me many times. So Voss pays you to find vulnerable researchers with promising work. You tell him what they're working on, and he swoops in, collaborates just enough to create plausible deniability, then publishes their research as his own. Walsh didn't confirm or deny. She just looked at Victoria with tired eyes. Hypothetically, Walsh said, if someone had been doing that kind of work and wanted to stop, wanted to make things right, what would happen to them? That depends on what they're willing to provide. Hypothetically, if this person had kept records, emails, payment receipts, lists of researchers they'd identified for the client, and was willing to turn those over in exchange for immunity from prosecution, would that be possible? Victoria felt electricity run through her. Yes, that would be very possible. Walsh finished her wine. I'll have my lawyer contact yours. 2 days later, Victoria's legal team received a file containing 7 years of documentation. Emails from Voss requesting information about specific researchers, lists of targets Walsh had identified, Payment records showing Voss compensating her for each successful collaboration that resulted in publication. It was the smoking gun. Victoria called Ethan immediately. "We have it," she said. "We have everything." Ethan arrived at the estate 20 minutes after Victoria's call. She met him at the door, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she saw something other than exhaustion in his face. Hope, maybe. Or fear that hope would be snatched away again. "Show me," he said. They went to her office, where she had the files spread across her desk. Printed emails, payment records, lists of names. Ethan picked up the first page, then the second, reading with the kind of focus that made the room feel smaller. "This is from Walsh?" he asked. She kept everything. Every email Voss sent her asking for research targets, every payment he made, every name of every researcher she identified for him. Victoria picked up one of the emails and read aloud. Quote, "Need someone working on cognitive learning interventions, early career, no major institutional backing, someone hungry." That's from 4 years ago, 2 months before he contacted you. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he set the page down. "He hunted me. He hunted all of you. Walsh would identify promising researchers, pass the information to Voss, and he'd swoop in. She got paid every time he successfully published using someone's work." "How many?" 12 confirmed cases over 7 years. You were number 8. Ethan sat down hard in one of the office chairs. 12 people. 12 careers. Some fought back like you did. Most just disappeared. Victoria sat across from him. But now we have proof it was systematic, intentional, not collaboration gone wrong, theft, planned, executed, repeated. Will this hold up in court? My lawyers think so. Walsh is willing to testify in exchange for immunity. And with her records, we can prove Voss knew exactly what he was doing. Ethan looked up at her. What happens now? Now we file a lawsuit, not just you, all 12 researchers, a class action showing the pattern. We go after Voss for fraud, theft of intellectual property, and damages. And we go after his publisher for knowingly distributing stolen work. That'll take years, probably. But we can win. And even if we don't win in court, we've already won in public opinion. Those emails are damning. Once they go public, Voss's reputation is finished. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I need to think about this. What's there to think about? This is what we've been working toward. I know, but once we file, there's no going back. Voss will come at us with everything he has. It'll be ugly, public. Leo will have to watch his uncle get dragged through the media again. He met her eyes. And Noah will be part of this story, whether we want him to be or not. Is that what you want? Victoria hadn't thought about that part. She'd been so focused on winning, on destroying Voss, that she hadn't considered what it would do to the kids. No, she said quietly. But I don't know how to protect them from it. Maybe we can't. Maybe the price of justice is too high. You don't mean that. Don't I? Ethan stood up, pacing. I've already lost everything once, I survived that, but watching Leo pay the price for my mistakes, I'm not sure I can survive that. This isn't your mistake. This is Voss's crime. Doesn't matter. Leo's the one who'll suffer when this goes public. Kids at school will say his uncle is a fraud. Teachers will look at him differently. He'll lose friends. Ethan's voice cracked. He's already lost so much. His father, stability, any sense of normal childhood. I can't take more from him. Victoria understood that fear. She'd been living it for 3 years, trying to protect Noah from more pain while accidentally inflicting it herself. But she also knew that some fights were worth the cost. What if we could control the narrative, she asked. How? We go public first, before we file the lawsuit. We tell the story on our terms, the 12 researchers, the systematic theft, Walsh's testimony. We make Voss the villain and the victims the heroes. We show what he destroyed and what you're trying to rebuild. Ethan shook his head. That's still exposing everything, but it's exposing the truth. Which means when Voss tries to spin it, when he calls you a liar or says this is a vendetta, people will already know better. She paused. And we include Noah, not as a victim, as proof that your methods work. We show what you've accomplished with him. We turn your teaching into evidence. Absolutely not. I'm not using Noah as a publicity tool. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm saying we show that your research wasn't just academic theory, it changes lives. It changed Noah's life. That's powerful. It's also invasive. He's 9 years old. He's 9 years old and he's thriving because of you. Don't you think he'd want people to know that? Ethan looked at her like she'd suggested something insane. Maybe she had. But she'd spent 3 years watching her son withdraw from the world, and now he was finally coming back. That was worth fighting for, worth showing people. I need to talk to Leo, Ethan said finally. And you need to talk to Noah. If we're doing this, they need to understand what it means. Victoria nodded, agreed. After Ethan left, she sat in her office for a long time, staring at the files on her desk. 12 researchers, 12 stolen careers, and one chance to make it right. She picked up her phone and called Noah's school. I need to pick up my son early today, she said. Noah was suspicious the moment she appeared in his classroom. He gathered his things without arguing, but in the car, he turned to her with narrowed eyes. What happened? Am I in trouble? No. We need to talk about something important. Is Ethan leaving? The question hit her in the chest. That was his first fear, that the one person who'd helped him would disappear. No. But something's happening that involves him, and I need you to understand what it is. She drove them to a park near the estate, somewhere neutral, somewhere they wouldn't be interrupted. They sat on a bench overlooking a pond where ducks floated in lazy circles. Ethan used to be a scientist, Victoria began. He developed a teaching method, the same one he's been using with you. But someone stole his work and took credit for it. That person destroyed Ethan's career, which is why he's been hiding. Noah processed this. The articles that said he was a liar, those were from the guy who stole his work? Yes. That's messed up. Very. But now we have proof. We can show what really happened. We can fix this and give Ethan his career back. That's good, right? It is. But it means going public with the story. It means people knowing about what Ethan did for you, how much you've improved because of his teaching. It means reporters might want to talk to you or write about you. Noah's expression shuddered. I don't want to talk to reporters. You wouldn't have to, but your name would be in the story. People would know. Know what? Victoria chose her words carefully. That you were struggling in school and Ethan helped you. That his methods work. Noah looked at the pond. A duck dove underwater, leaving ripples that spread in perfect circles. Kids at school already think I'm stupid, he said quietly. If everyone knows I needed special help, they'll think I'm even more stupid. Or they'll see that you were brave enough to ask for help, that you worked hard and got better. You don't know what it's like, being the kid who doesn't get it, who has to be explained things different ways, who takes twice as long as everyone else. Victoria's throat tightened. She'd known Noah was struggling, but she hadn't known how deeply the shame had rooted itself. You're right, she said. I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to feel like you're failing, like nothing you do is ever good enough. I spent 3 years feeling that way as your mother. Noah glanced at her, surprised. I didn't know how to help you, she continued. I didn't know how to talk to you. Every time I tried, I made it worse, so I stopped trying. I buried myself in work and told myself you were fine when I knew you weren't. She paused. Ethan showed me that you weren't broken. You just needed someone who understood how you learn. And now you're getting A's. You're excited about math. You're not stupid. You never were. Then why do I still feel stupid sometimes? Because shame doesn't disappear overnight. But sharing your story might help other kids who feel the same way. Kids who think they're broken because school doesn't make sense to them. Noah was quiet for a long time. Then he said, What if I say no? What if I don't want to be part of the story? Then you don't have to be. This is your choice. Will it hurt Ethan if I say no? Victoria wanted to lie, wanted to make it easy, but Noah deserved honesty. It might make the case harder to prove, but we'd find another way. Noah picked up a stick and threw it into the pond. The ducks scattered, then regrouped. I need to think about it, he said. Okay. They sat in silence, watching the water. Victoria's phone buzzed, messages from work, from her lawyer, from people who needed decisions. She ignored all of them. Right now, the only person who mattered was sitting next to her, wrestling with a choice no 9-year-old should have to make. Finally, Noah spoke. If I do this, will it help Ethan get his real name back? Yes. And other kids like me, they'd have someone who actually knows how to teach them? That's the goal. Noah nodded slowly. Then, okay, I'll do it. Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He looked at her. That's what being brave is, right? Doing scary things even when you don't want to? She pulled him into a hug before she could stop herself. This time, he didn't pull away immediately. He let her hold him for a few seconds before squirming loose. Can we go home now? He asked. I have homework. Victoria laughed despite everything. Yeah, we can go home. That evening, she called Ethan and told him Noah had agreed. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. He shouldn't have to do this, Ethan said. He wants to. He understands what's at stake. He's 9. He's 9 and he's braver than most adults I know. Another pause. Leo said yes, too. Said if it helps other kids, it's worth it. Then we're doing this. I guess we are. Victoria's lawyer drafted the press release over the next 2 days. It was careful, strategic, devastating. It outlined the pattern of theft, included testimonials from 4 of the 12 researchers, presented Walsh's documentation as evidence, and featured Noah's story as proof that Ethan's methods were legitimate and effective. The journalist who'd written the first article agreed to break the story. Victoria gave him exclusive access to the files, to interviews with the researchers, to Walsh's testimony. And she gave him Noah. The interview took place in the study, the same room where Ethan had first taught Noah, where everything had started. The journalist, a man named Marcus Chen, sat across from Noah with a recorder running. Tell me about math class before you met Ethan, Marcus said. Noah fidgeted with a pencil. Victoria stood in the corner, forcing herself not to interfere. I hated it, Noah said. Nothing made sense. Teachers would explain things and I'd just not get it. I thought I was stupid. And after you started working with Ethan? It was different. He showed me how to see patterns, how things connect. He didn't make me memorize stuff. He made me understand it. Can you give me an example? Noah pulled out some graph paper and started drawing. He explained quadratic relationships using squares, the way Ethan had taught him. His hands moved with confidence, his voice steady. Marcus took notes, his expression thoughtful. When Noah finished, Marcus said, That's really impressive. Do you think other kids could learn this way? Yeah, definitely. Lots of kids probably feel like I did, like they're broken. But they're not. They just need someone who teaches differently. After the interview, Marcus thanked Noah and turned off the recorder. Noah immediately looked at Victoria. Did I do okay? You did perfectly, she said. The article went live 4 days later. The headline read, 12 researchers, 1 predator, how Richard Voss built an empire on stolen genius. It was comprehensive, brutal, impossible to ignore. It detailed Walsh's role, showed the email evidence, traced the pattern across 7 years. It featured quotes from 6 researchers, including Ethan, and it included Noah's story, a 9-year-old boy who'd been failing until Ethan's stolen methodology saved him. The response was immediate and massive. Within hours, it was trending on every platform. Education organizations issued statements. Universities where Voss had speaking engagements canceled them. His publisher released a carefully worded comment about reviewing the allegations. And Voss's lawyers filed a defamation lawsuit against Victoria, the journalist, and the publication. The lawsuit demanded $50 million in damages and requested an immediate injunction to remove the article from publication. It claimed the allegations were false, malicious, and designed to destroy Voss's reputation. Victoria's legal team responded within 24 hours, stating that every claim was supported by documentation and that they welcomed the opportunity to present evidence in court. Then things got ugly. Voss appeared on a national morning show, looking somber and wounded. He denied everything, called the allegations a coordinated attack by failed academics with an agenda, and suggested that Victoria was using her wealth to manufacture a scandal. Ms. Hale is a powerful woman who's used to getting what she wants, Voss said, his voice dripping with sympathy for himself. When someone tells her no, she responds by trying to destroy them. This isn't about stolen research. This is about revenge. The host, clearly sympathetic to Voss, nodded along. And the researchers making these claims? Troubled individuals who couldn't succeed had to see in competitive academic environments. I tried to help them, collaborated with them in good faith, And now they're twisting that collaboration into theft because they need someone to blame for their failures. Victoria watched the interview in her office and wanted to throw something. Voss was good, believable, sympathetic, the wrong mentor being attacked by ungrateful protégés. Her phone rang. Ethan. "Did you see it?" he asked. "I saw it. He's lying through his teeth. People are going to believe him. He's Richard Voss. I'm nobody." "Not anymore. You're the scientist who was proven right. Your methods work. We have Noah as proof. One kid isn't enough to counter his entire career. Then we get more proof, more kids, more results." Victoria stood up, pacing. "We show that this isn't about revenge. It's about protecting the next generation of students who deserve better than his stolen, watered-down version of your work." "How?" An idea was forming in Victoria's mind, dangerous, ambitious, probably insane. "We open a school," she said. Silence on the line. "What?" "We open a pilot program, a small school using your methodology. We prove it works with more than just Noah. We create undeniable evidence that your approach transforms education." "Victoria, that's brilliant. I know. I was going to say impossible. Starting a school takes time, money, regulatory approval. I have time and money, and my lawyer can handle the regulatory approval." She was already making mental notes. "We start small, 20 students maybe, kids who are struggling in traditional schools. We document everything, their progress, their test scores, their confidence. We show the world what your methods can do." "Even if we could do that, it would take months to set up. So we set it up. And in the meantime, we fight Voss in court. We hit him from both sides. Legal action proving he stole your work, and real-world results proving your work is revolutionary." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're serious about this?" "Completely." "Why? Why are you going this far?" Victoria sat down, the question hitting harder than she expected. Why was she doing this? It had started as a way to help Noah, then became about justice for Ethan. But somewhere along the way, it had become bigger. "Because the system is broken," she said finally. "Because kids like Noah are being told they're not good enough when the truth is, the system isn't good enough for them. Because people like Voss profit from that brokenness while actual solutions get buried. And because," she paused, "because I spent 3 years failing my son, and now I have a chance to build something that might help other parents not make the same mistakes." When Ethan spoke again, his voice was rough. "Okay. Okay? Let's build a school." Victoria smiled. "I'll call my lawyer." Over the next 3 weeks, everything happened at once. Voss's lawsuit moved forward, with depositions scheduled for 6 of the researchers. Victoria's legal team filed a countersuit on behalf of all 12 victims, seeking damages and demanding Voss's publisher retract his books. The media covered every development, with public opinion shifting daily. Meanwhile, Victoria assembled a team to launch the pilot school. She found a building, a former community center she purchased and started renovating. She hired administrators, teachers who were willing to be trained in Ethan's methodology. She reached out to parents of struggling students, offering a chance for their kids to be part of something groundbreaking. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, she had applications from over 200 families. Ethan worked around the clock, developing curriculum, training teachers, preparing materials. Leo and Noah became unofficial assistants, helping test lessons and providing feedback from a student perspective. Victoria barely slept. She was running her company during the day, building a school at night, and fighting a legal battle in between. Her board of directors started asking questions about her focus. Her CFO expressed concern about the resources being devoted to pet projects. She ignored all of it. One evening, she found Noah in the study with Ethan and 3 other kids, children whose parents had signed up for the pilot program. They were working through a complex problem together, their voices overlapping as they argued about the best approach. Ethan noticed her in the doorway and walked over. "Recruitment session?" she asked. "Trial run. I wanted to see how the methodology scales with kids who have different learning profiles." He nodded toward the group. "That girl in the blue shirt, she has severe dyslexia. The boy next to her is on the autism spectrum. The quiet one in the corner has ADHD so severe she can't sit still for more than 5 minutes in a regular classroom." Victoria watched them work. The girl with dyslexia was building something with blocks while explaining her reasoning. The autistic boy was sketching diagrams. The girl with ADHD was pacing while thinking out loud. And Noah was in the middle of it all, helping translate between their different approaches. "They're all getting it," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah, because I'm teaching to their strengths instead of forcing them to compensate for weaknesses." Ethan's voice was filled with something she hadn't heard before. Hope. Real, solid hope. "This is what I always wanted to do, before Voss, before everything fell apart. You're doing it now. Because of you." Victoria shook her head. "I just gave you the resources. You're the one making it happen." They stood there watching the kids work. And for a moment, everything else fell away. The lawsuit, the media circus, the uncertainty. This was what mattered. These children learning, discovering that they weren't broken. The moment shattered when Victoria's phone rang. Her lawyer. "We have a problem," he said. Her stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Voss's team found something. They're claiming you have a personal relationship with Ethan Mercer that goes beyond professional interest. They're arguing that this entire case is motivated by that relationship, not by justice." Victoria's face went hot. "That's absurd. I barely know him outside of his work with Noah." "Doesn't matter. They have photos of you two together, testimony from your staff about how much time you've been spending on this. They're going to argue that you're romantically involved and using your resources to wage a personal vendetta." "There's no romantic involvement. Can you prove that?" Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. She thought about the late-night planning sessions, the dinners where they discussed strategy, the way Ethan had become part of her daily life. Nothing inappropriate had happened, but she also couldn't deny that he'd become important to her in ways that had nothing to do with Noah's education. "I'll handle it," she said, and ended the call. Ethan was looking at her with concern. "What happened?" "Voss's lawyers are claiming we're involved romantically. They're trying to discredit the case by making it personal." His expression went carefully neutral. "Are we? Involved?" The question hung in the air between them. Victoria realized she didn't know how to answer it. They weren't involved. Nothing had happened. But something had shifted between them over the past months. Something she hadn't been ready to acknowledge. "No," she said finally. "We're not." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we tell them that. They won't believe it. Then we prove it. We maintain professional distance. No more late-night strategy sessions. No more dinners. Everything documented. Everything above board." The suggestion made sense. It was smart, protective, the right move legally. It also felt like a loss. "Okay," Victoria said. "Professional distance." "Professional distance," Ethan echoed. But neither of them moved. The pilot school opened 6 weeks after the article broke. 23 students, ages 8 to 12, all of them struggling in traditional environments. Some had learning disabilities, some were just wired differently. All of them had been told, in one way or another, that they weren't good enough. The opening day was chaos. Parents nervous, kids uncertain, teachers trying to implement methodology they'd only been training in for a few weeks. Victoria stood in the corner of the main classroom, watching Ethan address the group. "You're here because school hasn't worked for you so far," he said. "And I'm here to tell you something important. That's not your fault. The system is designed for one type of learner, but there are dozens of types. You're not broken, you're just different, and different is good." A small girl in the front row raised her hand. "My teacher said I have a learning disability." "What's your name?" "Emma." "Okay, Emma, here's the thing about labels. They can be useful for getting support, but they can also make you think you're limited. What if instead of a disability, you have a different ability? What if your brain processes information in a way that's actually an advantage once we figure out how to work with it?" Emma looked skeptical but intrigued. "Like what?" "Let's find out together." Over the next month, Victoria watched the transformation happen in real time. Emma, the girl with dyslexia, turned out to have extraordinary spatial reasoning abilities. She could visualize complex three-dimensional structures in her head and rotate them mentally. Ethan taught her to use that skill to understand mathematical relationships, and suddenly concepts that had been impossible became obvious. The boy with autism, Marcus, had pattern recognition abilities that were off the charts. He could spot relationships in data that took others hours to find. Ethan gave him increasingly complex problems, and Marcus solved them with a speed that seemed impossible. The girl with ADHD, whose name was Riley, couldn't sit still but could think through problems while moving. Ethan let her pace, let her build with her hands, let her talk through her reasoning out loud. Her test scores went from failing to exceptional in 3 weeks. And Noah, who'd been part of the program from the beginning, became a kind of ambassador. He helped new students adjust, explained concepts in ways they could understand, showed them that transformation was possible. Victoria documented everything: progress reports, test scores, video testimonials from parents. She built a comprehensive record showing that Ethan's methodology didn't just work, it was revolutionary. Then she sent it all to the court. The depositions started in late spring. Victoria sat through hours of testimony, watching Voss's lawyers try to tear apart the case. They attacked Walsh's credibility, questioned the documentation, suggested that the researchers had been incompetent rather than stolen from. But they couldn't explain the emails. Walsh's records were too detailed, too specific. Voss had literally written, "Find me someone working on X who won't fight back," in one message. He discussed payment structures for successful theft in another. The documentation was damning. And when Ethan took the stand, he was unshakable. Voss's lead attorney, a man named Harrison, who looked like he charged $1,000 an hour, went after him hard. "Dr. Mercer, or should I say Mr. Cole, since that's the name you've been using, isn't it true that you falsified research data during your time at Northwestern?" "No." "Isn't it true that you were dismissed from your position for ethical violations?" "I resigned, and the ethical violations were fabricated by Dr. Voss's team to discredit me." "You have proof of that?" "I have emails showing Voss contacted my department chair immediately after I confronted him about the theft." 2 weeks later, allegations surfaced. The timing speaks for itself. Harrison switched tactics. "You've been working as a gardener for the past 2 years. That's quite a career change for someone with a doctorate." "I was blacklisted. No university would hire me. I had a nephew to support. I did what I had to do." "Or you were hiding because your claims couldn't withstand scrutiny." Ethan leaned forward. "I was hiding because powerful men destroy people who threaten them, but I'm done hiding." Victoria watched from the gallery, her hands clenched. Ethan was holding his own, but she could see the toll it was taking, the exhaustion in his face, the tension in his shoulders. When it was Victoria's turn, Harrison tried a different approach. "Ms. Hale, you've invested significant personal resources into this case. Why? Because what happened to Dr. Mercer was wrong. Or because you're romantically involved with him?" "I'm not romantically involved with Dr. Mercer." "But you've spent considerable time with him. Late nights working together, dinners, personal conversations about his past. I've been helping him build a legal case and launch an educational program. That's professional collaboration. Is it? Or is this entire lawsuit motivated by personal feelings rather than justice?" Victoria met his eyes. "My son was failing in school. Every tutor, every program, every intervention failed. Dr. Mercer changed that in 3 months. He didn't just help Noah learn math, he gave him confidence, purpose, joy. That's not about personal feelings. That's about recognizing that someone has a gift that should be shared with the world, not buried because a thief wanted to profit from it." Harrison tried to push further, but Victoria didn't budge. By the time she left the stand, she felt wrung out but solid. The trial lasted 7 weeks. Voss's defense crumbled slowly. First, one of his co-authors admitted under oath that Voss had provided source material that seemed suspiciously complete for work that was supposedly original. Then his publisher's record showed that Walsh's consulting firm had been paid through Voss's book advance, directly linking the theft operation to his published work. And finally, 2 more researchers came forward. People who hadn't been part of the original case, but who'd seen the trial coverage and recognized the pattern. They had their own stories of collaboration with Voss that turned into theft. By the time closing arguments happened, the outcome felt inevitable. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Victoria sat in the courtroom beside Ethan, both of them silent, waiting. Noah was at school. Leo was with a babysitter. The gallery was packed with reporters, academics, parents from the pilot program. When the jury returned, the 4 women stood. "In the case of Mercer versus Voss, we find in favor of the plaintiff." The courtroom erupted. Victoria felt Ethan grab her hand, squeezing hard. The judge banged her gavel, calling for order, but the noise continued. The damages awarded were substantial. $12 million split among the researchers, full rights to the methodology returned to Ethan, and an injunction requiring Voss to publicly acknowledge the theft and retract his books. It was everything they'd fought for. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ethan gave a brief statement thanking the researchers who'd stood with him and acknowledging that justice had taken too long but had finally arrived. Victoria stood beside him, watching him reclaim his name, his work, his future. And she realized that somewhere in this fight, she'd reclaimed something too. The victory should have felt bigger. Victoria stood on the courthouse steps, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, and all she could think about was getting home to tell Noah. The jury had ruled in their favor. Voss's empire was crumbling. Ethan's name was being restored. Everything they'd fought for had been won. But Ethan looked exhausted beside her, answering questions on autopilot, and she realized winning in court didn't erase 3 years of damage. It didn't give him back the time he'd lost. It didn't undo the fear Leo had lived with, watching his uncle run and hide. "Dr. Mercer, what's next for you?" a reporter called out. Ethan glanced at Victoria, then back at the crowd. "I'm going to keep teaching. That's what I always wanted to do." "Will you return to university research?" "No, I'm done with universities. I'm working with the pilot school we started, helping kids who've been failed by traditional education. That's where I belong." The questions continued, but Victoria tuned them out. She watched parents from the pilot program standing at the edge of the crowd, holding signs that said, "Thank you, Dr. Mercer," and "Our kids matter." Emma's mother was crying. Marcus's father was recording everything on his phone. This was the real victory, not the court ruling. This. Victoria's lawyer touched her elbow. "We should go. There's paperwork to handle, and Voss's team wants to discuss settlement terms for the civil suits." "How much are they offering?" "More than the jury awarded. They want this done quietly." "Tell them no." Her lawyer blinked. "Victoria, it's a substantial offer. I don't care. The jury awarded damages. That's what we're taking. No quiet settlements, no confidentiality agreements. Everything stays public." "That's going to make them fight harder on appeals." "Let them fight. We'll win again." She looked at Ethan, who was still fielding questions, his voice steady despite the exhaustion. He'd spent 3 years being silenced. She wasn't going to let anyone silence him again, not even for money. When they finally made it through the crowd and into the car, Ethan leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes. "You okay?" Victoria asked. "I don't know. Ask me in a week when this actually feels real." "It's real. You won. We won. You did this as much as I did." Victoria started the car. "I just wrote the checks. You did the hard part." "The hard part was living in motels and lying to Leo about why we kept moving. The hard part was watching my nephew eat ramen for dinner because that's all I could afford. This?" He gestured vaguely toward the courthouse. "This was just standing up and telling the truth. You made it possible." They drove in silence for a while. Victoria kept glancing at him, trying to read his expression. He looked like someone who'd been braced for impact for so long that standing upright felt foreign. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I don't know how to do this. How to be Ethan Mercer again instead of Ethan Cole. How to stop waiting for everything to fall apart. You don't have to figure it out today." "When do I have to figure it out?" "Never. Maybe. Maybe you just take it one day at a time and see what happens." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Is that what you've been doing? Taking it one day at a time? For 3 years. This is the only thing that works when everything else is broken." They pulled up to the estate. Noah was waiting on the front steps, still in his school uniform, practically vibrating with impatience. The moment the car stopped, he ran over. "Did you win?" he demanded. Ethan got out and crouched down to Noah's level. "Yeah, we won." Noah threw his arms around him. Ethan looked startled for a second, then hugged back, his eyes closing. Victoria watched from the driver's seat, something warm and painful expanding in her chest. When Noah finally let go, he turned to Victoria. "Does this mean Ethan doesn't have to hide anymore?" "That's exactly what it means." "And the school, we can keep going?" "The school's not going anywhere." Noah's whole face lit up. "Can I tell Leo?" "He's inside with the babysitter. Go ahead." Noah took off running. Victoria got out of the car, and she and Ethan stood there in the driveway, watching Noah disappear into the house. "He's different," Ethan said quietly, "from when I first met him. You changed him." We changed him. You fought for him as much as I taught him. Victoria shook her head. I didn't fight for him. Not until you showed me how. I was too scared to get close, too afraid I'd lose him the way I lost James. So I just stepped back and let him drift. You're the one who pulled him back. You're being too hard on yourself. No, I'm being honest. For 3 years I failed him. I was his mother and I failed him because I didn't know how to be both present and safe. She paused. You taught me that too, not just Noah. Ethan studied her face. You're a better mother than you think. I'm trying to be. That's new. They walked toward the house together. Inside, they could hear Noah and Leo shouting excitedly, their voices overlapping as they talked over each other. The babysitter appeared in the doorway, looking frazzled. They've been like this for 20 minutes, she said. I tried to get them to calm down, but it's fine, Victoria said. Let them celebrate. After the babysitter left, they found the boys in the study, already pulling out materials for what looked like an impromptu lesson. Leo had the whiteboard markers. Noah was arranging blocks on the desk. Can we work on that probability problem? Leo asked Ethan. The one with the dice that didn't make sense last time? Ethan looked at Victoria. Do you mind? Go ahead, I have calls to make anyway. She left them in the study and went to her office. The calls took hours. Her lawyer with updates on the settlement discussions, her board asking when she'd be returning to full-time focus on the company, reporters requesting interviews. She handled them all mechanically, her mind only half present. When she finally finished, it was nearly 8 p.m. She found Ethan and the boys in the kitchen making what appeared to be pasta from scratch. Flour covered every surface. Leo was kneading dough with intense concentration. Noah was attempting to operate the pasta maker and getting tangled in long strands of fettuccine. What is happening here? Victoria asked. Ethan said we should celebrate, Noah explained, wrestling with the pasta. And Leo said his dad used to make pasta, so Ethan's teaching us. Victoria watched Ethan guide Leo's hands, showing him how to fold the dough properly. There was something gentle in the way he taught, patient, attentive, without any frustration when Leo messed up the fold and had to start over. You know how to make pasta? She asked. My brother taught me, before he died. Ethan's voice was matter-of-fact, but Victoria heard the grief underneath. He was big on cooking as family time, said it was the only thing that kept people talking to each other. Smart man. Yeah, he was. They ate dinner at the kitchen table, pasta that was slightly uneven and overcooked in places but tasted better than anything Victoria's private chef had ever made. The boys argued about the probability problem they'd been working on. Ethan refereed. Victoria just watched, feeling like she'd stumbled into someone else's life. A better life. One where dinner was messy and loud and full of people who actually wanted to be there. After the boys went upstairs to play video games, Victoria and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen. They worked in comfortable silence, falling into an easy rhythm. She washed, he dried, neither of them talking about anything important. Finally, Ethan said, I should probably start looking for a place. A real place. Now that I can use my actual name again, I can sign a lease, open a bank account, stop living like I'm about to run. Victoria's hands stilled in the soapy water. You're leaving? Not leaving, just getting my own space. You've done enough, more than enough. What if I don't want you to go? The words were out before she could stop them. Ethan set down the dish he'd been drying. Victoria, I'm not asking you to stay for me. I'm asking you to stay for Noah. And for the school. And because this house has been empty for 3 years and you made it feel less empty. That's not a good reason to let someone stay. Why not? Because eventually you'll resent it. You'll want your space back, and things will get complicated. Things are already complicated. Ethan turned to face her fully. Are we going to talk about what Voss's lawyers said about us being involved? There's nothing to talk about. We're not involved. No, we're not, he paused. But we could be if we were different people in different circumstances. Victoria's heart was doing something erratic in her chest. What kind of different? The kind where you're not my employer and I'm not teaching your son. The kind where there isn't a massive power imbalance and a lawsuit and 100 reasons why it would be a terrible idea. Those sound like excuses. They're not excuses. They're reality. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. I care about you, more than I should. But I also know that you saved my life, my career, my future, My ability to be a father to Leo. I can't blur those lines. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to say that fairness was overrated and life was short, and they'd both been alone for too long. But she looked at his face and saw the same fear she'd been carrying, the fear of losing something important by trying to make it into something else. Okay, she said quietly. Professional boundaries. Professional boundaries. But you don't have to move out, not yet. The boys are happy. The school needs you close. And honestly, I could use the help with Noah. He listens to you in ways he doesn't listen to me. Ethan smiled slightly. He's starting to listen to you more. You just don't notice it. Maybe. They finished the dishes. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it was full of things neither of them was saying. When the kitchen was clean, Ethan headed toward the guest wing where he and Leo had been staying. Ethan? Victoria called after him. He turned. Thank you. For everything. You already thanked me. About 100 times. I'll probably thank you 100 more. Get used to it. He laughed, and the sound made something in her chest loosen. He was going to be okay. They were all going to be okay. The next few months were a blur. The pilot school expanded from 23 students to 40, then 60. They had to move to a larger building. Victoria hired more teachers, all of them trained personally by Ethan in his methodology. The results were undeniable, test scores soaring, confidence building, kids who'd been written off as lost causes suddenly thriving. Universities started reaching out, asking Ethan to speak, to collaborate, to consider returning to academic research. He turned them all down. He was done with universities, done with publishing for prestige. He wanted to work directly with kids, to see the transformation happen in real time. Noah started 6th grade in the fall at a private school that actually understood how he learned. His teachers called him gifted. Victoria remembered when those same types of teachers had called him hopeless. Leo thrived too, making friends at the pilot school, joining the chess club, slowly becoming less guarded. He still had nightmares sometimes about the years when they'd been running, but they were getting less frequent. And Victoria learned how to be present. It didn't come naturally. She still buried herself in work when emotions got too intense, still struggled with saying what she felt instead of just fixing problems. But she was trying. She had dinner with Noah every night. She asked about his day and actually listened to the answers. She stopped checking her phone during conversations. Small things, but they added up. One evening in October, she found Ethan in the study, staring at the whiteboard. He'd been quiet all day, distracted during the staff meeting at school, barely eating at dinner. You okay? She asked. Voss's publisher reached out. They want to re-release my original research as a book. Give me the author credit that should have been mine from the start. That's good news. Is it? Or is it just another version of the same system that failed me before? They didn't care about the truth when Voss was making them money. Now that he's disgraced, suddenly they want to do the right thing? Victoria sat down on the desk. So tell them no. I want to, but it would also mean getting the research out there, reaching more kids. Isn't that the point? The point is doing what feels right for you, not what serves the system. Ethan rubbed his face. I don't know what feels right anymore. Everything's different now. I have my name back. I have the school. I have stability. But I'm also angry, all the time. Angry that it took a jury to make people believe me. Angry that Voss is still out there, just with less prestige. Angry that 3 years of my life were stolen and I can't get them back. That's fair. You're allowed to be angry. For how long? At some point, don't I have to let it go and move on? Victoria thought about the 3 years she'd spent frozen in grief after James died. The anger she'd felt at him for leaving, at herself for not saving him, at the universe for being cruel enough to take him. It had taken Ethan showing up in her son's life to finally start thawing. I think you let it go when you're ready, she said. Not when other people tell you it's time. And if you're never fully ready, that's okay too. Some things don't heal completely. They just become part of who you are. Ethan looked at her. Is that what happened with James? You just accepted it as part of who you are? Eventually, but it took me a long time to get there. And I only got there because you showed me it was possible to still be present for Noah, even while I was carrying all that grief. I didn't show you anything. You did that yourself. No. I did it because I watched you do it with Leo. You were drowning in your own trauma, running from your past, barely surviving. But you still showed up for him every single day. That's what taught me I could show up for Noah. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, they could hear the boys playing basketball in the driveway, their voices carrying through the open window. I'm going to tell the publisher no, Ethan said finally. Maybe someday I'll want to publish the research, but right now I just want to teach. That's enough. Then that's what you do. He smiled. You make everything sound simple. It is simple. People just make it complicated. The school's first showcase happened in November. Parents, educators, and journalists filled the auditorium to watch students present projects they'd been working on: complex mathematical models, scientific investigations, creative applications of abstract concepts. These were kids who, 6 months ago, had been failing basic coursework. Now they were demonstrating college-level understanding. Emma, the girl with dyslexia, presented a three-dimensional model of urban traffic flow she'd designed using advanced calculus. Marcus, the autistic boy, had developed an algorithm for predicting weather patterns that outperformed standard models. Riley, the girl with ADHD, had created an interactive physics demonstration about momentum that had the audience gasping. And Noah, who'd been part of the program longest, presented a comprehensive analysis of how different teaching methods affected learning outcomes. He'd surveyed students, analyzed data, created visualizations. It was sophisticated, well-reasoned, brilliant. Victoria watched from the back of the auditorium, her throat tight. This was her son, the one who'd believed he was stupid, the one who'd been ready to give up. After the presentations, a woman approached Victoria. She introduced herself as Dr. Patricia Mills, a dean from a prestigious education school. I've been watching what you've built here, Dr. Mills said. It's extraordinary. Have you considered scaling this, making the methodology available to more schools? Dr. Mercer isn't interested in working with traditional academic institutions. I'm not talking about traditional institutions. I'm talking about a complete reimagining of how we approach education. What if we train teachers nationwide in this methodology? What if we created a network of schools that prioritize individual learning differences instead of standardization? Victoria glanced at Ethan, who was across the room talking to Marcus's parents. That's a big vision. It's the right vision. And you have the proof of concept. These kids are thriving. That should be available to every child who needs it. I'll talk to Dr. Mercer, but he gets final say. This is his work. Dr. Mills nodded. Of course, just think about it. This could change everything. That night, after everyone had left and the boys were asleep, Victoria found Ethan sitting on the back patio, staring at the garden he'd once maintained as a cover for who he really was. Dr. Mills wants to scale the school, she said, sitting beside him, create a national network. I heard. What do you think? I think it's what I always wanted, to change the system, to help kids who are being failed. He paused. I also think it's terrifying. The bigger it gets, the more that can go wrong, or the more that can go right. Always the optimist. Someone has to be. Victoria pulled her jacket tighter against the cold. You don't have to decide tonight. Just think about it. I've been thinking about it since the trial ended. What comes next? Whether I just keep teaching these 60 kids or whether I try to reach more. He looked at her. What do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever lets you sleep at night. If that's staying small and focused, that's fine. If it's going big and changing the whole system, that's fine too. There's no wrong answer. That's not helpful. I know, but it's true. Ethan laughed quietly. You're terrible at advice. I'm a CEO, not a therapist. I'm good at decisions, not wisdom. You're better at wisdom than you think. They sat together watching the stars come out, and Victoria realized this was enough. This moment. This peace. Everything they'd fought for had led here, to a quiet evening after a successful showcase, to 2 boys sleeping safely upstairs, to a future that finally felt possible. I'm going to say yes, Ethan said suddenly, to scaling the school, to working with Dr. Mills, to trying to change the system. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's what being brave is, right? Doing scary things even when you don't want to? He smiled. Noah taught me that. Victoria smiled back. He's a smart kid. Wonder where he gets it. Definitely not from me. I spent 3 years proving how not smart I was. You were grieving. That's different from not being smart. Maybe, but I still made mistakes, big ones. We all made mistakes. The point is, we're fixing them now. He was right. They were fixing things. Not perfectly. There were still hard days, still moments when Noah shut down, or Leo had nightmares, or Victoria felt the grief crash over her like a wave. But they were moving forward. That was something. The months that followed were intense. Ethan worked with Dr. Mills to develop a teacher training program. They piloted it in 3 schools across different states, testing whether the methodology could be effectively taught to educators who hadn't worked directly with Ethan. The results were promising, not perfect, but good enough to keep going. Victoria split her time between running her company and supporting the education initiative. Her board wasn't thrilled about the divided focus, but her company's stock was up, and they couldn't argue with results. Noah continued to thrive. He made the honor roll. He joined the math team. He stopped flinching when teachers called on him in class. He was becoming the kid he was always supposed to be. And Leo, who'd spent years being the quiet shadow in his uncle's life, started finding his own voice. He wrote a story that won a school competition. He made a best friend. He stopped asking when they were going to have to move again. In February, Ethan got an email from Richard Voss. He showed it to Victoria that evening, his hand shaking slightly as he held his phone. The email was brief. "I'm sorry for what I did to you and the others. It doesn't fix anything, but you deserve to hear it. RV." Victoria read it twice. He's trying to save whatever's left of his reputation. Probably, but it's still the first time he's admitted it was wrong. Does it matter? An apology from someone who only apologized because they got caught? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. It matters a little, not because I forgive him. I don't. But because it means he knows he lost. That's something. Are you going to respond? No. What would I say? Thanks for the apology after you destroyed 3 years of my life? He doesn't deserve my forgiveness or my acknowledgement. Then delete it and move on. Ethan deleted the email. Victoria watched him do it, watched the tension leave his shoulders. That felt good, he said. Good. He doesn't get any more of your time. They never spoke about Voss again. The network of schools launched officially in September, a year after the trial ended. 12 schools across 8 states, all using Ethan's methodology, all showing remarkable results. The media covered it extensively. The disgraced researcher who'd been proven right, the innovative approach to education, the kids whose lives were being changed. Ethan did interviews, gave talks, became the face of a movement he'd never intended to start. He was uncomfortable with the attention, but good at it, able to explain complex concepts in ways that made sense to parents and policymakers alike. Victoria stayed in the background, providing resources and support, but letting Ethan have the spotlight. This was his victory. She just helped him get there. One evening in October, 2 years after everything started, Victoria found Noah in the study. He was working on college-level calculus, preparing for a math competition. He looked up when she came in. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Always." "Do you think Dad would be proud of me?" The question hit her like a punch. She sat down beside him, trying to find the right words. "Yes, absolutely yes." "How do you know? I was failing when he died. He never saw me get better. He saw you struggle. And he would have wanted someone to help you the way Ethan helped you. That's what he would have done if he'd lived. Found a way to reach you, to show you that you weren't broken." She paused. "But I think he'd be even more proud of how brave you were. Agreeing to be part of the court case, sharing your story, helping other kids realize they're not alone." Noah absorbed this. "Do you still miss him?" "Every day. But it's different now. It doesn't hurt as much." "Because of Ethan?" Victoria hesitated. "Because of a lot of things. Because you're happy. Because I finally learned how to be present instead of hiding. Because we built something good out of something terrible." "Do you love Ethan?" The question was so direct it took her breath away. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you look at him the way you used to look at Dad, and he looks at you the same way." Victoria didn't know how to answer. She'd been carefully not thinking about her feelings for Ethan, maintaining professional boundaries even as those boundaries felt increasingly arbitrary. "It's complicated," she said finally. "That's what adults always say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it." "When did you get so perceptive?" "I'm 12. We're very perceptive at 12. Victoria smiled despite herself. "I care about Ethan. A lot. But there are reasons why anything more than friendship would be complicated. Like what? Like he works for me technically, and he's your teacher, and we have a professional relationship that could get messy if we tried to make it personal. Those sound like excuses. They're not excuses. They're real concerns. Noah shrugged. If you say so, but you both seem really lonely for people who care about each other. He went back to his calculus, leaving Victoria sitting there trying to process what he'd said. Was she lonely? Yes. Had she been pretending otherwise? Also yes. She found Ethan in the garden that evening, pruning roses he no longer had to pretend to care for, but still maintained anyway. Noah thinks I'm in love with you, she said without preamble. Ethan's hand stilled on the pruning shears. What did you tell him? That it's complicated. Is it? Isn't it? He set down the shears and turned to face her. I've been thinking about this for months. About what happens when professional boundaries are the only thing keeping two people apart, whether that's wisdom or cowardice. And what did you decide? That I don't want to be afraid anymore. I spent 3 years running, hiding, being someone I wasn't. I'm done with that. If I want something, I should be brave enough to say it. Victoria's heart was pounding. What do you want? You. I want you. I've wanted you since that night when you decided to fight for me instead of firing me. When you looked at all the reasons to walk away and chose to stay. He stepped closer. But I also want to do this right. Not as your employee or Noah's teacher, as an equal, which means maybe I need to step back from the school, or you need to step back, or we need to figure out some way to remove the power imbalance. The school needs you. You built it. The school has good teachers now that can run it without me micromanaging everything. And what would you do instead? Focus on the national network, on training teachers, on the big picture stuff that doesn't require me to be at the school every day. He paused. But only if you want this. If you don't, we pretend this conversation never happened and go back to being friends and colleagues. Victoria thought about the past 2 years, the late nights working together, the dinners where they'd talked about everything except what they were feeling, the careful distance they'd maintained even as it became harder and harder to justify. I want this, she said. I'm terrified of it, but I want it. Why terrified? Because I already lost one person I loved. I don't know if I can survive losing another. You won't lose me. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll try. That's all anyone can promise. He was right. Nobody could guarantee forever, but they could choose to show up today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. Victoria closed the distance between them. Okay. Okay? Okay, let's try. Let's be terrified together and see what happens. Ethan smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. Then he kissed her, and Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, solid, unshakable hope. When they pulled apart, she said, "The boys are going to be insufferable about this." Probably. Leo's been asking me for months why I don't just tell you how I feel. How long have you felt it? Since you showed up in Portland to track down Dr. Chen. Since you looked at me and said you were going to get my life back. Nobody had ever fought for me like that. You were worth fighting for. So are you. They stood in the garden together as the sun set, and Victoria thought about how far they'd all come. From a house full of silence to this, messy, complicated, full of people who were trying their best and sometimes failing, but always showing up anyway. The next morning, Noah came downstairs to find Ethan making breakfast in the kitchen. He looked at Ethan, then at Victoria sitting at the table with her coffee, then back at Ethan. "Finally," he said. Ethan laughed. "What? You two, finally, we've been waiting forever." "We?" Victoria asked. Leo appeared in the doorway. "We've had a bet going for 6 months. I said you'd figure it out by Christmas. Noah said Halloween. He won." "You bet on us?" Ethan said. "Of course we bet on you. You were so obvious." Leo grabbed juice from the fridge. "Does this mean we're a family now?" The question hung in the air. Victoria looked at these 3 people, Ethan, Noah, Leo, who'd somehow become essential to her life. Family wasn't the word she'd been using, but it fit. "Yeah," she said. "I think it does." "Cool. Can we get a dog?" Everyone laughed, and the moment passed into something ordinary. Breakfast, chatter about school, plans for the day. Normal things. Good things. The network of schools continued to expand. By the third year, there were 37 schools in 15 states, all showing remarkable results. Ethan became a consultant, training teachers and developing curriculum. He was good at it, better than he'd been at academic research because he actually cared about implementation, not just theory. Victoria eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations at her tech company, handing more control to her executive team so she could focus on the education initiative. Her board wasn't happy, but she didn't care. She'd spent a decade building a company. Now she wanted to build something that mattered in a different way. Noah graduated high school early, accepted into multiple top universities with full scholarships. He chose to study mathematics and education, wanting to follow in Ethan's footsteps. Leo thrived too, finding his passion in writing and storytelling, using the skills Ethan had taught him about pattern recognition to craft narratives. And Victoria learned that healing wasn't linear. There were still hard days when she missed James, when grief ambushed her in unexpected moments. But there were more good days than bad now. Days when she woke up grateful for the life she had, instead of mourning the one she'd lost. 5 years after everything started, the pilot school held a reunion. All the original students came back. Emma, Marcus, Riley, and 19 others who'd been part of that first chaotic year. They were in high school now, thriving in ways their parents had never imagined possible. Emma was planning to study architecture. Marcus was already taking college-level computer science courses. Riley was the captain of her soccer team and considering pre-med. They all gave speeches about how the school had changed their lives. But the moment that stuck with Victoria was when Emma stood at the podium and said, "I used to think I was broken. Everyone told me I'd never be good at math or science. But Dr. Mercer showed me I wasn't broken. The system was broken. And once I learned in a way that made sense for my brain, everything changed." The audience, full of parents, teachers, and students from the network schools, erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Victoria stood with Ethan watching the crowd mingle. Noah and Leo were talking with younger students, sharing stories, offering encouragement. "Did you ever imagine this?" Victoria asked. "When you were living in motels and pretending to be a gardener?" "Not even close. I was just trying to survive. The idea that I'd be here, with my name back, with schools using my methodology, with," he gestured at Noah and Leo, "with a family. That seemed impossible. Nothing's impossible, just improbable." "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what was the point of fighting so hard?" Ethan put his arm around her shoulders. "The point was this. Right here. All of it." He was right. The fight had been worth it, not just for the victory in court, or the schools, or the methodology, but for the people they'd become in the process, for the family they'd built from broken pieces, for the kids whose lives they'd changed and would continue to change. Victoria thought about that Tuesday afternoon 5 years ago when she'd come home early and heard her son laughing, how that one moment had cracked open her carefully controlled world and let light in. She'd been terrified of the stranger teaching her son, of losing control, of feeling anything again after years of numbness. But she'd been brave enough to lean into the fear, to investigate instead of shut down, to fight instead of retreat. And that had made all the difference. The crowd started to disperse. Parents gathered their kids. Teachers said their goodbyes. But Victoria stayed where she was, watching the school they'd built, the community they'd created. "Thank you," she said to Ethan. "For what?" "For saving my son, for teaching me how to be present, for being brave enough to stay when running would have been easier. You saved me first. I was drowning, and you threw me a lifeline. Then we saved each other." "Yeah, I guess we did." They walked toward the car where Noah and Leo were waiting. The boys were arguing about something, their voices overlapping in the way that meant they were both talking and neither was listening. It was annoying and perfect and exactly what family sounded like. Victoria had spent 3 years believing she'd lost everything that mattered, that grief had hollowed her out beyond repair, that she'd failed as a mother, as a person, as someone capable of connection. But she'd been wrong. She hadn't lost everything. She'd just been too scared to see what remained. And once she'd found the courage to look, to really look, she discovered that broken things could be rebuilt, that failure wasn't permanent, that it was never too late to try again. The house that had been full of silence was full of sound now. Laughter and arguments, and the everyday noise of people living together. It wasn't perfect. They still had hard days, still made mistakes, still struggled with old wounds that never quite healed. But they showed up anyway, day after day, choosing each other, choosing to be brave. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.